Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is a returning Nur Sharif, and we're going to discuss mental health. This is part of a sort of a mini series of shows I've been doing about mental health, and it's interesting actually. This is two guests now that have reached out to me about wanting to talk about mental health, which is awesome, and also just kind of I feel like how can I put this? I feel like a lot of the time, like mental health is not something that's really actively discussed, and when it is, there's a lot of mixed reactions. Some people, react to it positively. Some people just don't want to hear about it. Some people are somewhere in the middle, and I don't know. I guess I was quite taken back by the fact that there were two people that wanted to like actively discuss this because it's a pretty heavy topic. Um, and that's why I decided to do like a series of them. I'm also going to try and do my own episode where I discuss my own mental health, so that'll be funny. Um, but before we get into all of that, I'd like to welcome Nur. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you very much for having me again on the show for a third time.
That time, yeah, hat trick. Why did you want to discuss this? Let's
I
start there.
think I think the reason I want to discuss mental health specifically because it's a subject that sort of hits home and stuff because obviously something I've obviously dealt with probably most of my life and also someone I know close people as well who've dealt with it. So it's like a subject that's quite sensitive, but also something I think needs more awareness and hoping this can give a chance to spread awareness to the community.
Let's start with your journey with mental health because I feel like for most people there will be a particular moment that stands out. Could be childhood, could be in a more adult life, where you realize either that there's something wrong or that you're not maybe not like handling things very well. So, for example, for me, I discovered that I had an issue with like anxiety when I was in my late teens. I didn't know it was anxiety at the time. I just knew that I didn't cope well with, and in fairness, I was going through a lot anyway, but I didn't cope well with it. Like, like there was a lot going on, there was a lot of problems, and I found it quite difficult to keep calm. And I felt like there was an issue and I wasn't sure what it was. And of course, when I got into adult life and I started hearing other people talk about their experiences with anxiety, I was like, okay, so that's what I had. So let's start with you, man. Like, what was that starting point for you?
I think the starting point probably goes back a few years ago as well. So it's like because I always experienced anxiety, social anxiety, particularly in large public areas. And obviously at the time I didn't know why I was feeling anxious or why my mood was feeling quite low and stuff. And as until I reached out to the the right services, which was in this case I did doctor's GP, get support from family and stuff. That when I actually got in first I became aware of what mental health was because obviously I heard of the terminology because I knew, for example, famous people who went through it because I would talk about it, but I didn't exactly know what the experience was until I got like information around it. And I think like as obviously life or the years went past and stuff, I think I noticed my anxiety was sort of increasing and like, the low moods were increasing. And it's, I always say that tell people this that my experience with mental health is actually kind of an interesting experience because it's like there was moments there was times where everything would go great. For example, I have I think 2019 was probably a positive year for me and stuff, and I think then when it came until like probably around 2022 2023, that's when it sort of I would say spiral into when I would say into form when it became form of sort of depression probably and stuff. And and it's and I think like people always ask me where the where it was what was spark was, and sometimes when it was at the time I didn't know what the cause was it because I was why I was experiencing it and stuff. And I think it's when it came to 2024, so that's when it really became a really what I would say a dark a beginning of 2025 a dark place with mental health.
Okay, so this is interesting. Like you say that it starts with anxiety and then it moves to depression. And obviously, it's quite common with mental health that it does that in a series of stages. The thing that I've always found quite interesting is how it can be either that, which is quite logical, or it can be just sudden. So, like with depression, like I think probably had like acute or like intense sadness, something like that. But when people have described like what depression actually is, I'm like, well, I can't really relate to that. And for those who might not be as familiar, I don't think most people are, but like if you're not, depression, to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, no, but it's like a feeling of almost like paralysis where you you wake up in the morning and you just you don't want to get out of bed, you're numb, it's kind of like you don't feel anything, which is like apathy. Like it's almost worse than being sad because it's like you just don't care for anything. You don't see the point in anything, and it's intense and it's circular. I'm not saying you wouldn't feel any sadness at all, but like for the most part, you just have no drive. And I think as human beings, like when we say things to each other like, "Oh, just shake yourself out of it," try and be more positive, blah blah blah. Like, obviously, those are ignorant things to say to people when they're going through shit. But what they're trying to say in that moment is like, focus your mind on other things, push for it, you'll be all right. Okay. And I always tried to see it that way, but when I started learning more about what depression looks like and how it is, it's like saying that to someone with depression is ultimately pointless because it's like you can't just shrug it off. Um, yeah, I'll give you a really good example. Like I'm watching Better Call Saul at the moment. It's fantastic. If no one ever seen it, it's brilliant. It's better than Breaking Bad. I'll go as far as to say that. Anyway, there's points in the series where the main character Jimmy, or aka Better Call Saul, is he's clearly experiencing signs of depression or at least like post-traumatic stress, and there's a few different characters that experience similar things, and they do a really good job of humanizing these characters, like despite them all being involved in the criminal underworld and everything, like they're still human beings, and they go through these traumatic events and they react as you would, and there's a scene I watched today where Jimmy's in like a restaurant, and it's doing the classic film thing where everything's like loud in the background, and he's kind of like in his own head, and he's like, oh, what's going on? And I feel like that's quite a good representation of maybe what depression in everyday life looks like. Like I saw, sorry to go off on a bit of a tangent, I just want to build this a little bit. There was a picture that I saw, or a painting rather, of a guy standing in like a photocopying room, and he's just staring at it. And next door is like a birthday party, work party, whatever. Everyone else is in the other room having fun, basically, and he's there just presiding over this photocopier, clearly very depressed and unhappy. And I feel like that perfectly encapsulates what it's like to have depression or to be going through something very serious, like let's say the death of a loved one, because the world just moves on. The world continues. Like you could be at work and someone's having the worst day of their entire life, and you'd never know it unless they say it. And I think this is why I've always tried to be as compassionate as possible with people, and why I push that to other people, because you just have no idea what's going on in someone's life. And not everyone is going to tell you. Like some people will be vocal. I've always been pretty vocal about these things because I think it's important to get it out there. But I understand why people don't want to talk about it. Like sometimes it can be something you want to keep to yourself, or maybe that's just not you. It's not your personality to talk about these things, which is totally fine, by the way. But then there's also the issue of like, if you never talk about it ever, then it can build into this big, all encompassing thing that's like almost overwhelming, you know? Um, I've heard people say things like, oh, you're showing your weakness, you're exposing this, that, and the other. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I'd rather talk about these things, connect with someone, hopefully feel better, then like never talk about it, and then you see my name in the obituaries. It's like I'm serious, man. I've seen it time and time again. Um, I knew a guy at uni, not very well. I met him at work, and I remember the last time I saw him before he took his own life, and he was clearly going through something, but like you think back in those moments when you hear the news that, oh, this person's taken their life, you go back and you think like, was there any signs, any clue? And the reality was there wasn't. Like he was positive at work, he was a happy guy, had loads in common. I wasn't like close to him, like I was getting to know him, and he just seemed like a really cool, down to earth guy, really smart. He's first or second year at uni, had so much potential. Really, really smart guy. And the last time I saw him, I bumped into him on the road that we used to walk to get to work. So he was clearly coming back from work and I was going to work. And he was in a kind of a rush, like he was just preoccupied, but being polite, being nice, happy to see me and all that, but just clearly a lot on his mind. And then I think like we said our goodbyes. I was like, yeah, I'll catch up soon. Da, 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 da. And then like maybe a week or two later, he'd killed himself. And I was just like, what? Like, because it's not the first time someone I've known has taken their life or passed away at a young age, or, I've seen a lot of death, unfortunately. As you get older, you only see more. So, um, and again, go back to the point before, like, the harsh brutality of life is that it keeps going regardless. And it feels unfair and it feels cruel. Like the most important person in your life could pass away tomorrow and the world just continues like nothing happened. Or like I've seen people talk about stories like where someone passes away and there's the initial reminiscing and everything, and before you know it, like no one's talking about them. Yeah, there's that saying that like you die twice. First, you die in this world, and then secondly, you die when your name is uttered for the last time. And I find it like almost crazy in a way. Like this person lived a whole life, and they were here, and then they're just gone, and they're never gonna be here again. And people just forget. And I don't know, like I'm quite a nostalgic person, and I think back to the past. I think I accept the reality that the world has to keep going and continuing, and change is inevitable. But like, I can't think about all these people. I can't not think about all these people that used to be here and lived their lives and had all these memories and attachments and everything, and they're just gone. And the world just, it feels like the world doesn't care. Obviously, you have to move on, but it's just brutal. Can you speak to all of that? I know I said a lot, but yeah, thoughts,
Yeah,
feelings.
yeah, it's actually quite interesting, and in a way I can relate to it. Stuff because this goes back to I think back to March, or beginning of the last year 2024. Stuff where actually I knew someone who was close who was dealing with mental health as well, and it was actually a interesting experience. It was like while they were fighting their own battle, in a way they helped me get out my darkest periods. I gave me a path in life, and it was interesting. Like they were going through their own, but they actually went out the way to put a make give me a path, show me the positives and coping strategies, how to deal with it, and it made me question this person who was she was dealing with mental health. That's why she had again so much potential. She was into art, creative stuff and stuff, and that was yeah, that's how she would express her emotions and stuff, because obviously I guess everyone's different. She couldn't really have anyone to talk to about these things and stuff. So, and it's like when obviously, and it kind of in a way it also took a toll on my mental health, because the reason it took a toll on my mental health was that someone who I care about, who's close to me, I didn't want them to go through this alone and stuff. And it's like no one deserves to go through that dark period. And especially when I remember I think this goes back to around March last year, 2024. That when you have deep conversation with someone about your mental health. And I remember the one time she asked me if I was free at 2 a.m. to video call and stuff. So obviously I made a video call. We talked to stuff. She said that she had plans to. Unfortunately, she wanted to end it, all that stuff. And that was a subject that obviously hit hard as F enough. And unfortunately, when it came to March 15th, March 15th, last year and stuff, is that they obviously blocked me off everything. Things ended without closure between us and stuff. And obviously, and having that thought on my mind, was that I just wanted to know if she was safe. And at the end of the day, and it took, unfortunately, it was. I know it's only people say in 9 months is nothing, but to me it was like the longest 9 months of my life. I slept because I had many sleepless nights. I had get emotional breakdowns, not knowing that, because if this she was safe and stuff. And I remember towards the end of like the last year, so because obviously I opened up to people about it and the impact it had. Everyone was telling me you need to move on, you need to let go without really truly understanding the pain. And then when it came, I think I guess it came to around December, right before the Christmas tree. I think I guess you said I got a sense of, in a way, closure that she was safe and stuff. But obviously but knowing that 9 months is a long time. Not on my mind, it took a toll of that, knowing someone was going through a deep dark period and having that on my mind 24 hours.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think one question I actually want to ask is
Yeah.
you found out that this person is safe and well and stuff. I assume that they didn't contact you directly about that.
No, it was actually interesting where I found it. Like I found it through TikTok and stuff, because a page appeared, like the TikTok live appeared on my for you page. So I guess I don't know what it was. I guess in a way I was thinking I would never get the closure and stuff, but it's like, I don't know. It was, as soon as I opened the app, the live came up and she was talking, but I think she was still struggling with her mental health at the time.
Mm. It's just interesting in those moments, isn't it? Like you reach, I just find that whole scenario, like I get it to an extent, like maybe she blocked everyone and that was her coping strategy. But then if you find yourself in a better place, often like I find myself reconnecting with people and talking about it, or at least letting people know like you're all right. Like I don't know, but I don't want to say it's selfish because I feel like that might be too harsh. But like in a way, like something like that doesn't just affect you.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to disagree with me, like, well, when you're in that, all you care about is yourself, and you're struggling, and it's like, believe me, I understand. I've been there. Like, I get it. It feels like no one gives a shit. You feel like you're on your own, but the reality is that no action in your life doesn't affect other people in some shape or form. Like
Yeah.
every time I've ever thought about that, like I'd never do it, but I thought about it. um, and every time I kind of thought about it, and you shake some sense into yourself, the main thing I always came back to was, well, if I did this, you know, it's like the old saying goes, it's a temporary, sorry, a final solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And of course, I know mental health can be something that you might carry throughout your life and struggle with, but like you could still live a life.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You could still live a life, be happy. It might be something you're always battling with a little bit, but you could still live that life and make something of it and enjoy your time here. But the thing I always used to come back to is like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that to like my mom or the rest of my family or people that know me. I feel like in a way it's quite a selfish act. Um, I understand like circumstances are different from person to person though. Like I get it. Like I do understand that. I'm empathetic to that. I think you have to be. And the other side of it is what people say to you. maybe that person blocked you because they just felt like they weren't hearing the right things and they got annoyed and you know I've had it in the past. I've said things to people, gave them advice, and then they got annoyed at me, and then we never spoke again. And it's like, well, listen, I'm just trying to help. I'm not trying to step on your toes. You know, you can't predict how people are going to react to things. I always try to look at intent. Like, even if I get a bit annoyed at maybe someone's advice, or you know, it feels ignorant, it feels plain deaf, something like that. They're just trying to help.
Yeah.
And I think by explaining to people, like, hey, this is not the type of help I need. Like, for example, for me, one thing that always irritates me is when people try to give me like pragmatic advice, unsolicited advice. Like, unless I ask for it, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Because it makes me feel like people have just kind of assumed that I didn't think this through at all. Like, I'm just sitting there, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's like, with me, I don't do that. Like, I exhaust all the options first and then worry about things because I'm like, well, I've
Yeah.
tried everything, nothing's getting better. Fuck, what am I gonna do? But you know, the other side of it is people aren't in my head. They don't know the way I think. They don't know. They don't know what I have or haven't done. So that's fair enough. But if someone's your friend, if they know you well, I think the best advice you can give them is advice that actually makes sense in relation to their life and their personality and who they are. Don't tell them what you would do because what you would do has nothing to do with them. It's unless someone asks you point blank, like, well, what would you do? Then fair
Yeah.
enough. But I think that that doesn't make sense. Like, if you know this person, you know how their mind works, you know what their emotions are like, give them advice if they ask for it that is in accordance with that, you know? But before you get to that point, empathy, man. Empathy, empathy, empathy. I'm surprised so many people don't get this. I was ignorant for a bit. I had to learn. Um, it seemed ridiculous to me at the time. I remember thinking, like, well, it seems pointless to just sit and listen and not say anything. What does that achieve? Turns out a lot. It achieves a
Yeah.
lot. Because you might be the only person that actually bothers to sit and listen to that person. I've seen it time and time again where someone starts opening up who doesn't normally, or maybe they get interrupted all the time, and then you actually listen to them, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe they're listening to me." Like, I used to have this years ago. Like, I still get it now. I get pissed off. Like, you start talking to people about, I don't know, when people ask me about me, like, what do I do? I'm like, well, I do music, I do acting, and then maybe I'll start telling a story, and then they just stop listening, or they don't care, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll go fuck myself then, you know. And it's rude, and it hurts, and I understand. Like, to them, it's just some story. To me, it's my life, but I feel like if you're not willing to listen to someone, then you have no business having conversations. In any capacity, even if it's just like a chill, casual conversation. Like, I mean, that's just basic manners, isn't it? But when you bring that up to the level of mental health and trying to help people, my God, you can't just like let someone think that you're going to help and be there and then just not listen. I mean, that reinforces the way that person feels about themselves and the situation. You know, because often when you're dealing with mental health, your mind spirals into this illusion that no one cares. The reality is people do care. There will at least be a few people in your life that will care. Some people might have to like push into caring. I feel like in those moments, a lot of the time you learn who your friends are and you learn who actually gives a shit and who doesn't. And you learn a lot about people in times like that, um, for better or worse. But it is a process. And I think people have to understand that it's not something you can just be like, oh, I'll just be happy today. Like, oh, I'll just, yeah, no worries. Like, I'll just, no problem, right? Like, oh, I'll just stop being sad. Like, it doesn't work that way. You know, it's a process. Like, you know, I was trying to explain on live last night that why I'm not happy about certain things in my life, and because people don't get it, that from their perspective they're like, oh, but you know, you get to do what you love, and it's like, yeah, but like I don't, not really. Like I have to take this new job tomorrow, so I can afford to live, and because hospitality was just killing me and I couldn't do it anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
what does that represent? All right, let's play therapist for a second. A lack of control in my life, a feeling that I don't have control over my life, that I'm always having to sacrifice for things that I'm not passionate about. You know, I work hard in everything I do, but the reality is I only enjoy doing creative things. That's the stuff I live for. I could do it for weeks and never get bored for a single second, and I'll probably overwork myself and not even realize. Whereas a job where I don't want to be there, guess what? After an hour, I feel like it's an eternity. And I'm sure maybe people can relate, and maybe people will be like, oh, we'll just get over it. We all have to do it. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, for me, that's my idea of psychological torture. And the fact that I've been doing this for so many years and it's not been working, it's not been working out, and I'm not making any progress, and so on and so forth. The toll that that takes on a person's mental health is like astronomical. Because I think a lot of the time when I talk about my problems online or with friends or whatever, I think they seem to assume that like, oh, I'm just having a bit of a moment. Like, oh, it's just a bit of a moment. Like, oh, Christian's sad again. Oh, and it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I deal with crap all the time. I've dealt with crap my entire life. I'm used to a lot worse than this. The problem is what it represents, the bigger picture. And I feel like in so many cases with mental health, that's what you're listening out for. You're not listening for like, oh, this shit that happened at work. It's details. What you're listening for is what's the problem there, and the problem will often be something like, I feel like no one listens to me. I feel like I'm not heard, or I feel ignored, or I feel disrespected, or I feel that no one loves me, or I feel that I need some space. I feel suffocated. Like these are the things that people are screaming out, but you can't, like, not everyone can say it in those clear terms. It's not easy for everyone. Like I could say that, but then that's because I've learned over the years how to articulate myself and I'm confident in myself and stuff. But I recognize that it takes time and confidence to do that. It's not easy. A lot of people worry about people judging them. I personally couldn't give a fuck, but I understand that a lot of people do, right? And it's understandable because so many people in this world are judgmental, and I don't understand why. Everyone's going through similar things. You'd think people would be a bit more compassionate and empathetic, but evidently not a lot of the time. It's just like, well, it's easier to just judge people and give them shit. But and that's the thing that's always irritated me is that like people judging people, and then that person has a breakdown, and then suddenly they're like, "Oh, what's their problem?" And it's like people like you, fucking assholes like you, is the problem, Plus all the other shit I'm going through, and then you wonder why people have breakdowns. I'm not surprised at all when I hear someone's had a breakdown. I know exactly what that means. That means overworked, overstimulated, too much shit going on for too long, and the body and the mind can't cope anymore. Simple. Can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually interesting because empathy does definitely go a long way and stuff. And I think unfortunately, when I was obviously dealing with my mental health, obviously not straight away, but I think generally as the year went on last year and stuff, I did come across few people who had empathy and stuff and could relate. When not exactly been in like in your shoes, but they had their own experience with it, so they can relate to it. So by having that conversation makes you feel that you're not alone, you're not the only one, and knowing that someone actually generally can relate to you when they do say, "Hey, I understand what you've gone through and your experience," and having that conversation with the person makes you feel like not a burden. It's two people because I think that's the other problem is that we do it's like I think there's been times where when someone's when people ask me the question how I'm doing, that's a question I always tell. So I don't tell people directly, but that's a question I find difficult to answer and stuff. So it's like I remember there were times where I think I think it was only probably I think it was yeah, last week someone asked me how I was doing, and I literally wrote this whole paragraph, all my emotions that I was going through. Then I pressed the backspace and I just said I'm doing fine and stuff, and because it was an easier answer because I was thinking is this person really gonna understand, or they're gonna what's the reaction gonna be, or am I gonna be just told the same thing I've been told for the past few years, which is let go, move on. You should be feeling that emotion. I think, and also I think I also when people obviously I know people are trying to help and stuff, and I suggest you should do therapy, you should go talking therapy, CBT therapy. It's like with that stuff, it's like I have tried that in the past throughout my whole for my whole life. I've done therapy, but it hasn't worked because they don't get my what I'm dealing with. It's like, and plus I'm graded for 1 hour, and when I'm about to open up, they tell me time's up. You should come back and come in next week.
Exactly why I don't go to therapy. Yeah. Because I've had that experience. I had a session once, and I was like, "Wow!" I just cried my heart out to this complete stranger, and I've, spoken about very fucking like I told them I was in a toxic relationship and it was destroying my life and my mental health, and their response was, "Oh, sorry, our time is up. I can refer you to X, Y, Z." I'm like, I wasn't even annoyed. I was just like stunned,
Yeah,
tears streaming down my face. I'm like, all right. And I just remember walking out, and it was like one of those scenes from a movie where I was just like standing in the hallway, not really knowing what to do. I just walked off. I was like, Jesus. But that's the reality. I know people say, like, oh, there is good therapy out there. But the reality is, you need the right people. Plenty of people are trained to be therapists, but that doesn't mean they're good, right? A good therapist is a human being who's empathetic. So, what does that tell you? You don't always necessarily even need a therapist. You need human beings that are empathetic and will actually listen to your problems. See, the problem I feel with therapy a lot of the time is that it's all well and good teaching people techniques of how to handle their mental health or how to handle social anxiety or difficult social situations or whatever. Like, that's great, right? But some people need a soundboard. Some people need to just fucking be heard. And I think it's so tragic in many ways that you have to pay a therapist a lot of the time to just be listened to, because there's no fucker in your life that's willing to just actually sit and listen to you. Like, that's the cold hard reality of it. A lot of people just want to be fucking heard and listened to for more than 5 minutes without being interrupted or having someone start piling on advice like, well, have you done this? Have you considered this? I think you're doing this all wrong. It's like someone steamrolling through your life. And it's like, motherfucker, I'm living my life. I know what's right and what's wrong for me. I think the only time that that's not the case is if a human being is clearly not within their mental faculties, they're not in control. That I understand, but then that's where things like therapy and medication combined can help, and alternative medicines, whatever. Like, no two cases are ever the same. But yeah, I found like therapy to be quite clinical. I've had people suggest it to me over the years, and I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I will sort this out myself, and I have. I remember about 2 years ago, I had a pretty difficult time, and I fucked up, and I was, it was my own fault, and most people agreed, just keep going, pushing, you'll be all right, don't punish yourself. But there were a few people, and it's interesting, they just disappeared off the face of the planet. But they were like, oh, I think you should just quit everything that you're doing, and, like, you should just go to therapy, like, and they got annoyed when I carried on with my life. And I was like, listen, I know what's right for me. And what's right for me is I have to keep going. I have to have structure and organization in my life. Work really helps with my mental health. Like, whenever I've dealt with something difficult, I throw myself into that. I know that's not for everyone, but I do think that having your mind focused on something is important, whether that be work, relationships, a hobby, or something you're building on, maybe charity, community project, anything, like just something where you can build. And even if it's completely unrelated to what you're going through at the moment, like it almost seems ridiculous that you're doing it, the subconscious mind is always working. in the background. And I feel like, at least I've noticed that I've been able to deal with a lot of things and address a lot of issues in my mind throughout the course of doing these things. Because all while you're doing this stuff, you start thinking, thoughts come to mind, and you start presiding over them, and you're like, yeah, maybe I overreacted about this, or maybe I need to try this differently, or whatever the case may be. That's why when people say like things like come to your senses, like to an extent, I agree with them. You do have to take time out to get to that point. But people that it seems like a lot of people. I don't know. I probably sound like a broken record here, but they don't understand the basic emotions. Like if someone's angry, don't tell them to calm down. If someone's sad, you shouldn't just turn around and be like, "Oh, have you just tried being more positive?" Like it's just I don't understand people's logic in those situations. And going back to what you were saying before, I feel like when people ask you that fucking question, I hate that question because it's a very personal question. People mean well, but often if you ask someone, "How are you?" and they respond, "Not good," and then you start talking, you can see the regret in their eyes as soon as they've asked because they wanted was just a quick, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear that you're going through some shit. And it's like, well, motherfucker, don't ask me how I am then. If you don't want the truth. Like, if you just want to live in a world where we're all just like, yeah, everything's great. I'm fine. We're all fine. Everyone's just fucking magical right now. We live in Disney and everything's great all the time. Like, that's not what life is like. Like, it's not. It's just not. I wish it was, but it's not. Like, the reality is there's good and bad times. And when I see my friends are down, I try to cheer them up, distract them, whatever. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but I'll try. I think that's always the most important thing is the willingness to try and make someone feel better about certain situations or try to address what's going on in some way, or even just distraction is kind of cool in a way. Sometimes that does help. Sometimes the last thing people want to do is talk about what's going on, and they just want normality to have an escape where they don't have to think about what's going on for longer than 5 minutes. I don't know. I think I guess people just have to learn more about empathy. I guess that's the whole point. I've spoken about this before on the show. Um, I think people just have to kind of get their heads around the fact that like listening to someone is very powerful, especially for a person who's never been listened to. Um, you really don't have to do much. Sometimes you can just like, let's say you got a partner and they're going through it, but they don't want to talk. Even just being in the room and just like making some snacks and food, sitting down, watching a film, like that can do wonders for someone. It really can. Um, I don't know. That's all I got. um, Other than what you've discussed so far, what's been sort of the biggest obstacle you've faced in your mental health?
I think my biggest obstacle probably has to be the breakdowns that happened last year, especially about, I think like, with the going back to when things ended without closure with this person and stuff, because like you know, I was expecting things to end without any closure stuff, especially when you see everything with that person and stuff. And I think with it that I think with it it's interesting how it worked with mental health because when it ended stuff, it's like because I was actually outside in a in a public place and stuff, so I couldn't show my emotions there. And I thought to myself, what do I do? Do I go back home and go back home and stuff, and or do I stay there and just do what I need to do throughout the day and stuff? And because obviously I decided to stay there because I needed something a positive distraction just to get my mind off a few things. And I remember when I got got home and stuff. That's where reality really kicked in at night and stuff, knowing that that this person is not in my life anymore and stuff. And then that's when the emotions kicked in. The breakdowns started at that particular, like, I guess I call it a chain of reaction started and stuff. And I did eventually, after I remember a few weeks out, we did have the energy to do even basic stuff, which was I was neglecting my hobbies. I was neglecting go to places and stuff, because it's like because where, and I tell people this because it's like the place that I ended was at the in London at the National Art Gallery. So since then I haven't been to that place since, because every time I go past it, go to it brings back memories and stuff. So I avoided that area, and then it's like eventually I did try to open up to people about this is what happened. I didn't get the closure. I know I think what I was trying to communicate to people was the impact it already had on my mental health and stuff. But it's like people again didn't seem to they dismiss that instead of saying to you move on. There's plenty of other people for you to meet. You don't meet. You just let it go. It's, moved on. You need to move on with your life and stuff. And like I get it. If it was, let's say 8 years, so that I get that point. Is that you have to then move up. But this is what we're talking about here. Matter of few weeks. It's like how constantly especially someone you deeply care about. How do you let go and of that emotion, strong emotion, and then you suddenly go back to normal, get on with your life again.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a situation like that, obviously, eventually you do have to suggest something like that to your friend,
Yeah,
but I don't know, man. Again, it's a process. Like, how long is too long? Well, I don't know. I mean, like grief, for example, can be years.
yeah,
You could, yeah, you do have to eventually move on, but like, you're never going to not think about that person.
yeah,
I've always said it's like the pain just lessens, and you think more about the good times, and it's kind of like bittersweet. I think that's, if you can get to a point where it's like bittersweet, then like you'll be all right. But yeah, like if you're still going through something, the worst thing you can hear is, "Oh, just fucking go over it, mate." It's like, how?
yeah,
How do I do it? Like, I'd love to just in a situation like that be like, well, how would you do it then? How would you
yeah.
just get over the fact that like this person doesn't want anything to do with you anymore, or this person's broke up with you, or this person's died? Like, what, you just, no worries, easy peasy. I'll just forget about it. Like, what? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just, sorry again. I know it's a broken record thing, but it's just tone deaf to me. It's like, I guess that person has never had to deal with anything like that, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone really, because it is paralyzing. Um, like I know when I've had anxiety, like fuck me, it just paralyzes me. I can't do shit. I feel like sick. I just have to wait for it to end, and then afterwards I can kind of like regroup and start getting on top of things again. Um, I think a big problem as well in society now is that everything moves so quickly. So there's this expectation that everything has to be right now. And like I've made sure to always do things on my schedule. So like I don't answer emails straight away. I don't answer messages straight away. Um, I'll do it on my time. Just because everything's instantaneous doesn't mean that I have to be instantly available. I don't think any person should have to be. As more and more time moves on, I'm distancing myself more and more from the internet, and I love it. I think it's great. I think it's good to just get the fuck away from it. Get away from people's expectations. You know, people are busy. People are doing things. People are going through things, and you don't owe other people your time. I think sometimes people have that attitude that you owe them something. It's like you don't owe people shit. Like, don't forget, this is your time. This is your life.
yeah,
Um, make things on your own schedule, do things on your own time. And if people can't accept that, then that's on them. That's not on you. But yeah, um, let's move on and talk a bit more about. I know you've spoken about therapy, and we've kind of we've kind of destroyed that.
yeah.
Is there any other forms of treatment, maybe medication, anything that you've taken that you found helped or was bad or anything in between?
I mean, for me personally, I guess just my personal opinion and stuff. I've always, told people, I'm against medication and
Okay.
stuff like antidepressants or anything like that because I haven't tried it, but for me, I don't really like the idea of it and stuff. So, and in terms of, in terms of like, treatment, like I think like I came to accept, that the clearly therapy hasn't worked for me in the past and stuff. So I had to look at alternative ways and stuff. And this is where I think we mentioned, I think briefly earlier, which is I think this is where creativity comes in as well. And for me, it's stuff creativity and particularly writing has been my best form of therapy and stuff because it's like I'm in a. It's like for me, it was like a positive escape from everything that was happening around me, and I could like forget about everything, even like and even helped me take like a detox from social media for good weekend in a positive way because it's like I was doing things on my own time. I was writing the stories, the characters, and I think like, and I tell people, this who asked me, it's like, this current project I'm working, which is the crime thriller script and stuff. I tell people it was actually came from it was created from a dark place and stuff because it took sometimes someone told me it takes one emotional event to break you, but it's also there to help you build that strength as well. Because sometimes you have to go through those things in order to be the person you're meant to be in the future. And I think that's when someone when I got told that at first I didn't realize what it meant, but it actually it actually made a lot of sense because sometimes even though it may feel like the most difficult experience of your life, you're go through a harder, but sometimes it's needed in a way to make you open a lot of things. And in my eyes, it kind of opened me to a lot of things and stuff, like to be more to see who the general people are, who my close friends were, and also how I react to situations as well. Because it's like now it's for example, like we mentioned before, it's like you do, rather me, you're like forcing a relationship or forcing that person to communicate with you. I just let it be. If that let them answer in their own time, and actually, it's interesting how it kind of slowly made me, come to terms with that situation. And I think that's what the saying goes. Is like these most creatives, whether that's you doing writing, musicians, or even actors and stuff. They've all this the reason that they're able to create powerful stories or powerful sayings is because they've gone through some of the most darkest times of the life, and that's why you see some of the most beautiful things created in the world, and that's needed, I think, more in the world, that creativity. And I feel like everyone did that, or everyone had that vision. I think the world would be probably a more positive place than what it is at the moment.
This album that I'm about to release, like, I've been thinking about it more recently, like the lyrics, like what I wrote these songs about. Some of those things are things that happened many, many years ago. And I feel like disconnected from. I remember the emotions. I remember why I wrote it and everything, but it feels like a different lifetime. Whereas other songs feel very much on brand with today and how I'm feeling right now and stuff. And some songs are just timeless. But it's interesting to me. Like I never really considered that I seem to I always write about what I know, but it's always like themes that keep coming up again and again. But it's good to write about those things. Like you said, it's almost a form of therapy. It can help. I think it can help center the mind and channel it towards something productive. And it's a form of communication. It's a way of connecting with people and saying like, hey, this is my experience of it. You know. Um, already had some people commenting on my latest single saying that, and I found that quite interesting because you're telling stories with songs, with media, film, whatever. You're telling stories, but it often comes from a place of reality, and I think that can be really powerful in many ways. That can help people. It can be just a good distraction, I guess. Um, you mentioned social media. I really want to talk about that. What do you make of the impact of social media on mental health? I mean, I gotta say, I've noticed that it's kind of warped people's minds in many ways. I feel like attention spans are not there anymore. There's a real lack of empathy on the internet. There's people doing crazy things, like crazy. And like, don't get me wrong, people doing crazy shit when I was growing up on the internet, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it felt a lot more innocent in some ways. It was like the Wild West as well, though, but it hadn't taken over our lives. It was more of a kind of a thing that you did for fun, but like it wasn't the thing. Whereas I feel like now it's like it's the only thing most people even think about, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's like I said before, I'm trying to distance myself more and more and get to a point where I can spend less time online and more time in the real world. What do you make of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's yeah, it's interesting with social media because actually what I did, particularly because last year when I was going through that I actually deactivated my Facebook recently and stuff, and I thought at first I thought oh, I'm gonna miss it, I'm seeing people's posts, I'm gonna miss a lot, but soon as the moment I deactivated that, I remember the day, soon as I pressed deactivate, but I actually had a sense of relief that I was off it. And so because and it's like what I don't know what it was, but like I wasn't seeking validation. I wasn't worrying about people please. I was worrying about you know any of that because it's like what I was using. I know people use Facebook, but like for different things. I use it to for the personal stuff, life. So for me, I used Facebook for my creativity to post and share that. And I think obviously not many people were giving attention to that because people dismiss. I remember like I remember I can't remember when it was, but I remember I made actually a few posts about where I was actually open about my mental health particularly and stuff. And again, like it was an experience. It's like people got mixed reactions. People then tell me, why am I doing it on social media? Why am I posting about it? I should be talking about it. It's like they're forgetting that it's it's my experience, my page. I could do it. So and I thought rather than going through it, and all it was doing was affecting me more by staying on that social media platform because it's comparing my yourself to other people. So I deactivated that, and I think like in terms of social media, I think like when it comes to TikTok particularly, I know like people there's been mixed opinions on TikTok. Some people say it's a toxic app because of a y z. But from my experience, I think TikTok's been a better platform for me because it's like I've got a good community of people. Feel like I'll be more open about my mental health on TikTok compared to any other platform, and because you meet like-minded individuals who understand generally care. I remember like I think it was yeah, it was actually yesterday. I remember this guy he was doing he does TikTok lives, and I joined his box because he was a mental health theme, and we were talking about it, and for the first time ever I actually was open without any judgmental, and it made me feel like at least a human being is listening to me. It makes you feel less alone, and it's like and I think but it then you got the other side of I guess TikTok stuff is like, for example, because I always tell people I don't I don't use it for political reasons. I don't use it for gifts or anything like that. I'm just there to create my creativity. I spread awareness as a writer. That's what I'm there for. It's not about making and like asking people for gifts or anything like that. Sitting on TikTok live, I'm there doing the honest way and stuff. And I think because I feel like by having an honest approach to it, it like makes my made my mental health a lot better and stuff. Because rather than you got people who generally what I found is that when in terms of the mindset, when you change your I guess mindset to obviously I guess not completely, but when you have a little bit of positivity in your mindset, you actually attract the right people. And I've actually learned that from experience because I remember last year when I was not a good place, wrong. I was attracted to the wrong people, whether that's relationship wise with the people, and it's making me even more worse and stuff. And now it's only beginning towards the end of last year, beginning of even this year, I've actually the right people who are who are genuine and meant to be. I guess in my life they actually care with actions rather than saying with the words like generally can actually show it with actions, and that's sometimes it's better to have a four close people than to have 10 people who would invite you to sit at the table.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I think But with social media, everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have something to say, whether you want to hear it or not. um, but I think it's important to show people that they can talk about these things, and also, yeah, to remind them of what you just said, that like, hey, this is my platform, this is my thing, I do what I want. I've had to remind all sorts of people about that. Like, I'll take on board what you say, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Like, I'll do
Yeah.
what's right for me, and it might not make sense to you, and it might even annoy you, but that's tough. You do what you want in your life, and let me get on with what I want to do in my life. Simple. Um, this is an interesting question. What is your experience of mental health support in the workplace?
I think yeah, that's actually
Hmm.
an interesting question. I would say, just from my experience, I would say it's massive laxity. Something because I remember I used to be teacher assistant
Right.
at a school and stuff. And when I did just like any job application, because obviously I did many I applied for many jobs at the time. And knew when you fill many job applications, they always say the same thing, that they care about diversity inclusive. If you want to disclose anything, put it, I take consideration reasonable adjustments even and stuff. And because obviously, and like whether that's even for like an interview, this to make reasonable adjustments or like that. But it's like I remember like when I actually I don't really tell people when I was at the being a teacher assistant stuff. It was going good at the start because when you're new at the job, you get used to it. And I thought to myself, okay, you'll get things will get better as it goes on. But then it was literally I didn't even know how to spell probably the worst experience of my time, because it's like even though I enjoyed the job, there's lack of what's called mental health and stuff. Because I remember I asked one time I haven't had any training and stuff. I mean, are you gonna give me training on the job, because that is key? And because without training, I don't know one of these over we're having a DBS check, and you tell me to you got a DBS check, therefore you're clear for work. But that's where we're but I have the training, and I need to have the training to do the work. Otherwise, and it is making my mental health more worse than I think I thought when and it's like one of those jobs where they only call you when they need you and stuff. So it's like and I think that even made my even mental health even more worse, because I thought because I remember I had to take a break a break for to study and stuff. So I took had to practice my university. I thought, okay, let me get through my studies and then I'll go back to that job. So I go back to job, reach out to them, asking is there any I'm ready to work again. And they're straight tell me, oh yeah, yeah, we'll call you when we need you, or the or rather, or there's no jobs at the moment. And I remember like it was a frustrating period of my life, is because there were even times where I get to the place, but I cancel last minute as soon as I
Yeah.
arrive. And I thought myself, and I remember there was time I said, what, I can't do this, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be living on at this staying at this job which is paying me well not enough clear to get by. Therefore, I need to make a change in my life. And so I think I made the decision. I said, what, I'm just gonna leave it. Maybe I try and find something better and stuff. And I remember as time went on, I was struggling. I had interviews, but they didn't understand. And I think it's interesting when I came across I don't know when something. It's interesting when people say everything happens for a reason. Stuff like at the right time, everything will work out. But told that, I say, okay, I want things to work at this moment, because I want to, because I want to actually accomplish something with my, when my life, rather than sit, being a whole year without any work, which was 2023 was that year for me. And I think it's only till like June to 2024 is when I came across that the theater in London was actually looking for writers and stuff. So I thought myself, you know what? Let me, clearly this is my passion. This is what I enjoy. We only live once. And whatever happens, I'm just gonna apply for this and stuff. I don't know what to say when someone gives you that opportunity when they ask you like like start fresh or a clean slate. It actually comes. I guess that was the spark of turning my mental health in a different direction, because I thought this person even though they knew what they was open about what I was going through, they didn't use it against to say, oh, you going through this, therefore you can't be a writer and stuff, right? Because I know most jobs, there have been jobs and stuff. Will tell you, yeah, just because you're going through this, therefore you can't, for example, if you want to apply for, let's say, I think the police force or when you would join the, the armed forces, that if you have any mental health condition, you can't apply for it. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Crazy as well, because like quite obviously people in those services deal with that. I mean, how could you not? If you're a police officer, imagine the sort of situations you're going to get called into and
Yeah,
the trauma you're going to have and all sorts of shit. I just find that crazy. I mean, obviously, if someone's like really, really, like I don't know, schizophrenic or bipolar or whatever, I can see how that would be problematic. I don't think that they should be completely excluded from a position. I think it all comes down to really how you manage your condition and what that looks like on a day to day basis. Um, but to outright just kind of like be like, oh no, you had some therapy like 10 years ago. Sorry. It's like, come on, man. And this is also another reason why I've always been hesitant to like take medication or get therapy or whatever, because once it's on record, it can be used against you,
yeah,
which is fucked up, but that's the reality we live in. Like you said, so much of job applications and interviews are bullshit. Like, oh, we're a diverse employer, whatever, and then they're only employing people based on like quotas they got to fill, or like if they say the reasonable adjustments thing. I think to an extent that's reasonable, as in like they are actually trying to accommodate. Like for instance, if there's no wheelchair access and they have to make that. But a good thing to keep in mind, people, is that it's all what they're required to do by law. This is not them doing it out of the goodness of their hearts or because they're like a
yeah,
great employer. It's because the law says they have to do it, and if they're seen not to do it, then they can get sued. That's what they give a shit about. When it comes to mental health, like you will never be sued for say having you will never be fired for like having a mental breakdown or having depression or whatever. Your company will probably do something like they'll monitor it. they'll they'll either do it subtle and they'll find a way to be like, oh well, your progress has not been great for the last quarter, and we've given you these warnings, and therefore we'll have to let you go, or you've not met this. They'll try and find something unrelated and be like, yeah, sorry, that's the issue. When actually they're firing you because they think you're a liability or whatever because of your mental health, which is bollocks. Or they'll do it more blasé, which I've always thought is pretty risky. They'll actually fire you because of your absence, and you're like, okay, but can you do that legally? I
yeah,
mean, I've given you a doctor's note, and I've said that I'm struggling with, I don't know, breakdown or whatever, and you're firing me for absence. See you in court, motherfucker. I mean, I don't know. I can't see it any other way. I think that, don't get me wrong, I know there are good companies out there. I know there are good employers. I see through a lot of the bullshit. I studied marketing at uni, and that's the art of bullshit, really. It's advertising, sales. It's all just trying to manipulate you. And I sound like a conspiracy theorist for saying this, but it comes from experience as well. Like when I see different employers, different interviews, you see through the crap. You see what they're really about within about 5 minutes. You can also tell if somewhere is genuine and somewhere it's not. It's funny, actually. We got a lot in common. When I was listening to you talk there, I feel the same as you with the whole progress thing. I get frustrated. I feel like I'm always just watching everyone else be successful, and yet I have no success. I think people seem to have this misconception about me that I really want to like get my big break and make it, and it's like, no, I just want to do this for a living.
yeah,
I don't care about fame or money and any of that shit. That doesn't mean anything to me. What means something to me is getting to do this for a living and not having to do jobs that I hate for a living.
yeah,
That's what I want. That's
yeah,
a reasonable goal as well. I don't think that that's unreasonable. But anyway, and yeah, progress, making progress. If you feel you're not making progress, it really gets to you. Like yourself, Worked in hospitality for about 2.5 years by choice. I chose to do that because it was more flexible and it enabled me. I was always on 0 hours contracts. I was never in like full time employment. It was always just like 0 hours. It was just unpredictable. I got sick of. I mean, we'll get to the job in a second, but I was sick of, I'd work my ass off, I'd have regular employment, and then like suddenly I got a month or two of no work every middle of the year and like beginning of the year. Stressful, man. It's fucking scary when you got nothing. You're relying on that savings, and you're like, shit, am I gonna be all right? I spoke about it a lot on streams, but like about 4 or 5 months ago, I started looking for a proper job. I accepted that I have to do this. I'm basically working full time hours anyway. Might as well have a better job for less hours and more money, mate. It's just logical. Um, and I'm not 20 anymore. I can't be doing hospitality and customer service jobs because it is some of the most demanding jobs you'll ever work in your life. The hours are crazy. You never get appreciated for the work you put in, ever. It's just an expectation, and if you can't hack it, guess what? They'll just replace you with someone else. It's that brutal. But the worst thing about it was how it made me feel about myself. I always felt like beneath people, and often like customers would make you feel that way. Sometimes, obviously, sometimes more with their tone or what they didn't say or the way they looked at you or whatever. Um, there's this natural inclination for people to assume that if you work in hospitality or the service industry, that you're stupid and you have no intelligence. And it's like, well, there's many reasons that people choose to work in these jobs. It's not necessarily because you have no intelligence and you're not skilled. While it is true that those jobs don't like require qualifications or degrees or whatever, they're not easy jobs. Like I can work in customer service and I'm really good at it, but I learned how to do it. There's ways of doing things, and you have to be willing to put up with a lot of bullshit. Like for instance, I Karens don't have any effect on me. I couldn't give two shits. I'm like, look, I'm dealing with way worse crap than your pissy complaint about this. I don't know, 10p that you're not getting off this product. Like, do you know what I mean? Send the Karens my way. I'll deal with them. I don't care. Um, Funnily enough, I mean, as much as it made me feel shit, it was often the least of my problems with the customers. The actual issue was the people you work with, and you get on with people for the most part, but then people get immature, people get unprofessional, people get just quite frankly disrespectful, and I'd had enough. I snapped. Like I went back to the place that I was working regularly recently, and I had this idea in my mind. I'd do a few shifts here and there and keep the job while I'm working my new job. Mm-mm, ain't doing that. two shifts back, and I'm like, oh, fuck this, fuck the lot of yous. I'm out. I'm gone. I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm not putting up with this anymore, and no human being should have to. Um, I haven't burned the bridge or anything, but I'm just like, I can't see myself walking back in there and doing it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like how those people treat me. I deserve better. I don't like the bitchiness. It's like working with fucking children. I don't understand. It's a workplace. Be professional. Accept that people have shit going on in their lives and be empathetic. Talk to people with respect. Um, be reasonable with your expectations. Help people when they're struggling. Don't be a dick. I don't know. Just don't be an asshole. Don't be. You know what I mean? Like if you have a high turnover rate and you just blame it always on your staff, then quite frankly, you've got something missing. Like you've got a few marbles missing or something. Like high turnover rate means one or two things. It either means you're a shit employer and people hate working for you, or you're employing people who are not likely to stay there for very long, like students or whatever, which is inevitable. But I mean, I don't know. I've seen good places to work where people stayed long after they'd finished college or uni or whatever, and just kept it on the side, or even just started working there regularly. And then I've seen places where people leave after like a month. The place that I work, there's a regular turnover. There's people that stay, but then a lot of the people that stay are not there constantly, and the people that are there constantly all want to leave. It's like surprise, surprise. Um, and I just look at that and I'm like, how can you not see that this is a problem? How do you not see that? Yeah, I got tired of telling them, and I just keep it to myself now. But I don't even make a song and dance about it. I just get on with it now. I'm like, yeah, I'm out. Peace. I'm just not dealing with this. Um, what you were saying about like fresh starts, I think is powerful. I start my new job tomorrow, and I'm nervous, but also I'm just happy with what it will bring to my life. I'm hoping I can balance it out with everything else. I don't know. It's kind of nerve wracking, like yeah, fitting into. But when I look at it like that, I just want it to work out so that I never have to do hospitality ever again. That's the main thing, and just to reclaim some ownership over my life again. I'm willing to like go all into this job and just give it my all. It's something new. I can add to my endless list of employment history. It's ridiculous. One day, I'm saying this now, one day I want someone to interview me about every job I've ever had because that would be a show. Honestly, that would be a show. Anyway, enough about me. Sorry. A couple of final questions for you. Can you speak to men's mental health awareness and support? We're both men.
Yeah.
We both dealt with mental health. I want to know your kind of thoughts and feelings on that.
I think yeah, there's a huge stigma when it comes to men's mental health that definitely needs more awareness on it because I've seen I've been seeing many TikTok lives as of people who do men's mental health and stuff, and I think that's actually and it's interesting because every time I join the lives, it's good that they're doing awareness, but you can see the comments flowing of how the hate, the negative comments and stuff. And it's like and that's coming from both genders, whether that's for male or and females who don't agree with it and stuff. And I think like because it's interesting because obviously like I remember a while back I was in this when you're in this group chat and stuff, and obviously I knew obviously the people was, and obviously every time like anyone had a issue, they would say it's a safe place to talk about it and stuff. And I remember every time because obviously and it turns out that obviously most of them were females in the group chat. I remember I opened up about mental health a few times and stuff, and I said yeah, I've got the struggle, I'm not doing the best, but I always get dismissed. I said, but if one of them opened up about their mental health, then like all the attention was on them, like so sympathy feels, and how they can help and stuff. And I think I made a decision. I just said, I'm just gonna leave this group chat because there's no point in me being there anymore. Because if I'm good, get annoyed.
When you said that they dismissed you, what kind of things would they say?
I think like I've been told, like for example, to man up, or I shouldn't be feeling these emotions, or just be ignored completely for my emotions. I think that's something I've got used to, I guess, throughout life. That not everyone, I guess, I get the point that not everyone knows how to help you. That's different. But somebody asking someone for 5 minutes to speak to someone, or you want to have open up at it, because there's been times where I've seen people who say they what's called believe in mental health awareness and spreading awareness, but it's like when you actually open up to them about it, it's the complete opposite. They don't. It's like they will ignore you for weeks, days. They will, or like like a complete stranger. There's actually a few people who generally are spreading awareness of mental health, because one of my actually a perfect example of positive awareness of it is because one of my friends does a regular TikTok lives on men's mental health and stuff, and actually someone who generally cares about the concept and the awareness, and actually wants saying that more should be done around it, because I think because the way that I think society has made it that is that for example, particularly men's mental health, that you you should, because you're a male, you should man up. You should be speaking about your problems and stuff. But it's like you want to speak about it and stuff. But it's like I think a perfect, like going back to obviously what Robin Williams. He's actually a perfect example of, I think, as someone who was dealt with was dealing with mental health. I think throughout all his life, and at this time, I think I'm just obviously I don't know where the backstory. But I think I presume that he reached out to people, whether it's close people, rather that he close people that he's going through this difficult time, or he kept it inside of him and stuff. And when he obviously had that final, blur, when he unfortunately took his own life, is that there's like people went to all social media, what even saying that why did he do it? We're saddened to hear, why did he not speak up? But it's like you forget that point. He probably did try to speak up, but you weren't listening to him. And then it's like when he went to that moment, it's like then you suddenly would start caring. But it's like now, well, I don't know, is I think in years when it got, it's like now suddenly the world, like you mentioned before, the world's moved on. He's obviously he's buried now. People moved on and stuff. It's like no one wants to know. They know him as an actor, know where the film has started, but they don't speak about his mental health struggles. And that's what I actually found interesting, because whenever you have conversations about Rob Williams, it's like, oh, he's done this film, he was amazing in this Disney film, he was a phenomenal actor, but what about his mental health struggles, which that was the reality, who he really was as a person.
I think people just don't care.
Yeah,
To put it bluntly, I mean, I care. I know you care. Like, there's a lot of people that do care, but for the most part, people just don't. Like, people see men's mental health as like a joke. And it's always the same thing. It's like, oh, no one took it seriously. Someone takes their own life, and now suddenly there's all this regret and like, oh, we should have seen the signs. And it's like, I don't know that there's always necessarily signs when it comes to men's mental health, because as a man, like, you grow up into a world where you're told, it's not even like you're told that, actually. It's just, you just know that you shouldn't
yeah,
discuss it. And if you do, it's problematic. Um, I talk about it online and stuff, but I know instances where I should never do that. Like, for example, the workplace.
yeah,
I would never, ever talk about mental health in the workplace. I don't care how many people tell me it's okay. I don't care if you say, like, oh, it's all confidential, it's safe. It's like, no, never. Because it will be used against you. Um, I've seen people online say, it's weak for a man to talk about it. I never understood the mindset of how talking about your mental health makes you any less of a man. I think being a man is like, there's a lot to it. It's a broad thing. Um, I think that the mind is the most important thing. It's the strongest. Without the mind, you have nothing.
yeah,
So it needs to be strong. You need to have that intact. I understand that every man is different. Like, look, for people looking at me, I'm sure they can say, like, I'm quite an emotional man, quite passionate man, quite intense man. I get it. Not everyone's like me. Not every man is like me. There's a lot of guys that are a bit more stiff upper lip and a bit more, you know. But one thing I've always noticed over the years is that, I tend to get on better with women generally, but I get on with blokes, and I've noticed that blokes have always felt quite comfortable around me because I don't push. Like, if I can see someone's not comfortable about talking about something, I don't push them. I might ask them some questions about something if I sense something's wrong, but I allow them the space to be them. This is
yeah,
the thing. Society is always telling you how you should be rather than trying to understand how you are and speaking to that. If you want to understand men's mental health better and be there for men in the right way, try to look at the type of man that you're dealing with and understand what it is he actually needs. You know,
yeah,
maybe it's a sounding board. A lot of the time with men, like, we tend to deal with things more in anger and frustration, which is sad. We should be able to just cry shit out, but sometimes that comes afterwards. Sometimes it's like, get the anger and frustration out, and then maybe the crying. I don't know. You don't have to cry. I think there's a misconception that that is, if you never cry, if you never show that emotion, then there's something wrong with you. Um, I disagree. Might surprise you to learn. I don't cry very often. Um, I did actually think there was something wrong with me growing up. And then I realized that like I'm just built a certain way, and it just means that I don't always feel the. I guess it's pragmatic. I'm quite a pragmatic person, so um, I do feel emotions and feel sadness and stuff, and I'm more than happy to cry, good things, bad things, but um, I know this. I'm not comfortable crying in public.
Yeah.
Um, and that's sad because here's the interesting thing: like, you see a woman crying, you don't think anything of it. You might be like, "Oh, I hope she's all right," but you don't look at that as weird behavior for a woman.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see a bloke crying, people get weirded out by that.
Yeah.
People mock. I've seen stuff online which like it will be like a fun kind of video, maybe like a dad getting emotional, and then you look at the comment section and it's just people being like, "Oh, he's crying," huh? And it's like, why is that such a bad thing? Like, what, a bloke can't cry a little bit,
Yeah.
you know? Because I mean, take it to a dark place, but I'd rather see the man cry, wipe his tears away, and then laugh it off and then walk away than like never see that man again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's yeah. So like finding that space for people, I think, is important. I don't know what it would take to break the stigma, but I appreciate the efforts that people are putting out there. I think it's important to try. I just think it's going to take a long, long time. There's still just a lot of blokes in the world that just, feel this need to be like, I got to be strong and boisterous. And look, you can still be a strong, boisterous man and talk about your emotions. You can be like, the both can coexist outside of one another. You know, that doesn't make you any less of a man. I feel like being a man has more to do with like your sense of ideals and your mindset and your principles more so than whether or not you fucking cry or not. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm quite old fashioned, like in the sense that I look at things like my word is my bond. You know, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, men, try crying a bit more. Try just opening up a bit more. See if it works for you. I'm not saying you have to go into a fucking health support group and start giving up your emotions to strangers because that's most people don't want to do that. I get it, man. Um, I will say this: if you're a bloke who's in like a group where like you guys don't talk about that, I get it. I understand. I think it might be worth branching out in an instance like that. Find some people you can kind of sound off, some other people that are a bit different to your friend group, because and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that as well. Like going out with the boys is really powerful, especially when you're going through some shit. If it's a good positive friend group, like they'll support you in other ways. You might not necessarily have a deep conversation, but they'll make you feel good about yourself again, which at least will get you in the right headspace. And I think that's also often overlooked. Like guys, we tend to. That's what the whole brotherhood thing is. We tend to like find solace in that and a sense of positivity in that and strength in that. So there are ways that we deal with it, but I just think there are other ways that we could deal with it maybe more effectively. What has mental health taught you about life?
I think that's a very interesting question. I think it's what's taught me about life is to be, I guess, more grateful for it and stuff because it's like, I know like, when I look at, for example, I think what it seems that when you talk to like a lot, more people who've gone through their own mental health struggles and stuff, and I think it kind of made me look at things from a more different perspective and stuff. Because like obviously not I'm like putting myself down and thing, but it's like for me and stuff. I'm looking. I was looking back like it's like I was reflecting just the other day. I said, look, I had these breakdowns. You went through this thing all over a what's called a relationship breakdown without any closure. And so while this person who I was talking to has went through like obviously I don't know if I can even mention it, but they went through some serious stuff that happened to them, and so it made me look at things in a different perspective. That that when you just look around around the world and stuff, that there are b- bigger, I guess other things happening, so many issues happening. When I look at my like own situation and stuff, is like that at the end of the day I'm I've got roof on my head, I've got food on the table, I got life, which is the most precious thing, and people don't take that for granted because because life I think is the most precious thing that a human being can have. And stuff because to be having the chance to wake up every day to enjoy. I guess you could say enjoy life, and so and set goals for myself, accomplishment, have people, close people, close friends, family around me, people who, care. So that's sometimes in life they say, it may not like seem like a huge thing at the time, but that's a huge thing in my eyes because it's better than having it's better having that than having loads of money in your, $1 million dollars, for example. Because there's actually, leading up to this and actually relate to this. I actually was watching this, I think it was it was a documentary, I think a slash film, but it's based on a true story and stuff, and it was about this actor and stuff, and all he wanted to do was he wanted to make it big Hollywood. He wanted to be, the biggest, actor out there, and he thought money was the way to happiness so, but what happened is though that he had while he was actually doing while he was an actor, successful actor, which he had stuff. He had I think he had a wife. He had I think he had a daughter stuff, which was his family and stuff. And obviously, and I always told him that that he never has time to spend. He never spends time with them at home, even on the holidays. He's always doing acting roles. He's always going abroad, doing all these different things, but never at home. And eventually, he said that he's once he makes enough money, he'll make sure that he spends time with him. Eventually, what it showed you was interesting. Though I think he got eventually to a point that he got older. So obviously his mum passed away. That eventually that his wife decided to divorce him and moved to that country because he never at the time. And obviously he kept doing it. Then eventually he was I remember there's a powerful scene. He's sitting there on his at the final moments of his life and stuff, and the person's asking him, "What do you want to do with your you got all this, mansions, you got all the money. Who are you gonna give it up to?" Because he said you haven't got any family to give it to, and stuff. So what are you gonna do with it? And he for the moments he needs a moment to think about it because he never actually thought about that moment in life, what he's gonna do with all this stuff. Because it's to him, it was all about making that stuff, but he dismissed the most important stuff in his life, which was the people around him, because including friends, they all left him because of because he was more invested in money than he was in life.
Powerful sentiment there, man. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Final question for you. Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Uh, yeah, I can say I have like a final thought and obviously probably an upcoming project I'd like to share stuff. And in terms of like upcoming thoughts and stuff, it's like but I know it may not seem like to people like at the moment that you're thinking that you may feel hopeless at the moment when you're going through mental health and stuff. But there's always one thing I learned: there's always light even in the darkest moments in life and stuff. Because even it may not happen straight away. But like they say healing or healing process, it takes time. And from my experience, healing it's definitely, but it's a rough road. It's a journey I'm still on. It's like there's been days where it seems impossible. I can't it does seem like I could make it, but then I remember someone told me, think about it this way. It's like, when you get to that final destination, whenever that may be, you look back at it and it'll be worth it because it's like you'll know it'll make you who you're meant to be, and you'll know when the time is when that moment happens, rather than you sit here and say I'm going to do this next year and stuff. You just life works in mysterious ways. They say, and leading up actually connected this in terms of upcoming projects like this current crime thriller project I'm working on, and actually it's actually in a way related to mental health in a way we're talking about, because actually one of the lead characters I wrote about, he's a in this even though he's a true crime writer, he actually experienced his own mental health trauma because he deals with he's dealing with all these different cases, he's had his issues throughout life, and the one I wanted to show was that I wanted to spread awareness on men's mental health, because this is a male character dealing with his mental health, but he's obviously someone who's been keeping it inside him for many years. But I think one would show it that it's okay to show emotions. And I want to do more stories like that where we're doing that. I think I was actually I'll actually say it on here that my next I was keeping a surprise on my next story. Project was going to be a story about autism and stuff, because I think that's another thing that I wanted to give the community a voice.
Awesome, man. Well, I wish you the very best of luck with that. I think it's brilliant that you're bringing that into your work, and I think it can only help to strengthen the connection you make with other people. And I think that's probably arguably the most important aspect to creativity and art. So thank you so much for sharing everything today. Thank you for just
Thank
sharing
you
your
very much.
thoughts. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, and until the next time, man. Thank you. And
Thank
to
you
all
very
the
much.
Yeah, no worries, man. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're enjoying the series on mental health. And if you have any further questions, please drop them in the comments. We can always do a follow up or something thereafter. Thank you so much. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.